In the year 2045, the world looked different. Cities were tall and bright, filled with flying cars and glowing screens. Humans had advanced in technology, and their lives were easier than ever before. But deep in space, a dark shadow was watching them. The Zarkans, a powerful alien race, had their eyes on Earth. They were known for their strength and fierce nature, and they had conquered many planets before. Now, they were ready to invade. On a bright morning in New York City, people were going about their daily lives. Sarah, a young scientist, was at her lab working on a project to clean the air. She was passionate about her work and believed that humans could make Earth better. Meanwhile, across the city, a soldier named Jake was preparing for a training exercise. He was strong and brave, ready to protect his home. Little did they know, their lives were about to change forever. Suddenly, alarms blared across the city. Red lights flashed, and panic filled the air. The sky darkened as alien ships descended from the clouds. The Zarkans had arrived. These massive, menacing ships looked like jagged rocks, and their engines roared like thunder. People screamed and ran for safety, but there was nowhere to hide. The Zarkans had come to conquer. As the ships landed, soldiers poured out, armored and armed with powerful weapons. They marched through the streets, ready to take control. Jake, still in his training gear, quickly grabbed his gear and ran to the city center. He joined a group of soldiers who were forming a defense line. "We need to protect our people," Jake shouted, his voice strong and determined. The soldiers nodded, their faces set with resolve. Meanwhile, Sarah watched from her lab, horrified. She had seen images of the Zarkans in her research, but seeing them in person was terrifying. She grabbed her phone and tried to reach her family. "Mom, Dad, you need to get to safety," she cried, her heart racing, but there was no answer. The chaos outside made it hard to hear anything. Back at the city center, the Zarkan leader stepped forward. He was tall and imposing, his skin a dark green, and his eyes glowed red. He raised his weapon and spoke in a deep, booming voice. "Humans, we come for your planet. Surrender now or face destruction." His words echoed through the streets, sending chills down everyone's spine. Jake felt a surge of anger. "We will never surrender," he shouted back. The crowd behind him cheered, their spirits lifted by his courage. But deep down, he knew the odds were against them. The Zarkans were powerful, and they had come to conquer, not negotiate. As the Zarkans advanced, they began to fire their weapons. Bright beams of energy lit up the sky, hitting buildings and causing explosions. People screamed and scattered, trying to find shelter. Jake and the other soldiers took cover, firing back at the aliens, but it felt like throwing pebbles at a mountain. In the midst of the chaos, Sarah realized she had to do something. She ran from her lab and joined a group of scientists who were setting up a command center. "We need to find a way to fight back," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. The scientists worked together, trying to gather data and create a defense strategy. "We need to communicate with them," one scientist suggested. "Maybe there is a way to reason with the Zarkans." Sarah nodded, knowing that time was running out. "Let's send a message, but we need to be careful. They might not respond well to humans." Back on the streets, the fighting raged on. Jake and his team fought bravely, but they were quickly overwhelmed. The Zarkans showed no mercy, pushing forward with their advanced technology and powerful weapons. It felt hopeless. Jake looked around at the destruction. Buildings were crumbling, fires blazed, and innocent people were caught in the crossfire. Just as despair began to settle in, Sarah and the scientists sent a message to the Zarkan leader. They explained that humans were not their enemies, that they wanted peace. They offered to negotiate. But in the chaos, the message seemed lost. The Zarkan leader received the message, but he was not interested in peace. He saw weakness in the humans' words. "They think they can reason with us. We will show them our power," he growled, turning back to his forces. As the sun began to set, The city was in ruins. Jake and the soldiers fought on, but they knew they were losing ground. The Zarkans were relentless. In the darkening sky, fires blazed like stars, and the sound of destruction filled the air. Meanwhile, Sarah and the scientists were trying to gather the remaining citizens, urging them to stay together. "We must find a way to survive," she said. "We cannot give up." But deep inside, she felt fear. Could they really find a way to save their world from the Zarkans? The invasion had begun, and no one knew how it would end. All they could do was hope that somehow they would find a way to fight back against the darkness that threatened to consume them. The fight for Earth had started, but the battle was far from over. The first attack. As dawn broke over the city, the air was thick with tension. The destruction from the night before was still fresh in everyone's minds. Buildings lay in ruins, smoke billowed from several locations, and the streets were eerily quiet. The sun struggled to break through the haze, casting an orange glow over the devastation. Sarah stood among the scientists, their faces pale and anxious, trying to devise a plan to counter the Zarkans. "Are we really going to just sit here?" Jake said, pacing back and forth. He could feel the anger bubbling inside him. "We need to take action. We can't let them take our home without a fight." The other soldiers nodded, their spirits low but ready to fight back. Meanwhile, Sarah was trying to connect with the remaining citizens. "We need to come together," she urged. "We can't let fear tear us apart. If we work as one, we can find a way to survive." People around her listened, their faces mixed with hope and despair. The Zarkans, however, were not resting. Their ships hovered in the sky, dark and menacing. Each ship was equipped with advanced technology, and their weapons were more powerful than anything humans had ever seen. The alien leader, Zarak, was growing impatient. He wanted to show the humans who was in charge. As the day wore on, reports came in from all over the city. Zarkan forces were moving closer to neighborhoods, spreading terror and chaos. Jake and his team prepared for what they knew was coming. They gathered weapons and armor, ready to defend their home. "We can't let them reach the heart of the city," Jake said, rallying his soldiers. Then, without warning, the first attack began. The Zarkans unleashed a barrage of energy blasts that rained down on the city like deadly rain. Buildings exploded into flames, sending debris flying everywhere. People screamed and ran in all directions, trying to find shelter. Jake and his team rushed into action, taking their positions to defend against the attack. "Get to cover," Jake shouted, ducking behind a crumbling wall. His heart raced as he watched the chaos unfold. The Zarkans charged into the streets, their weapons firing wildly. They were ruthless, showing no mercy. The humans fought back, but it felt like a losing battle. In the midst of the chaos, Sarah and the scientists were still trying to send messages to the Zarkan leader. "We must find a way to communicate," Sarah insisted, but the alien forces were relentless, and their messages went unanswered. The scientists worked frantically, trying to hack into the Zarkan technology, hoping to find a way to turn the tide. Back in the streets, Jake was fighting alongside his comrades. "Stay strong. We can do this," he yelled, firing his weapon at the advancing aliens. The sounds of blasts and screams filled the air. For every Zarkan they hit, it felt like two more took their place. Jake could see the fear in the eyes of the civilians, and it fueled his determination to protect them. But the Zarkans were not only attacking with weapons, they were also using fear as a weapon. They captured humans, dragging them away, and Jake's heart sank at the sight. "We have to save them," he shouted, pointing towards the captured citizens. But the Zarkans were too powerful, and Jake's team struggled to reach them. Meanwhile, Sarah received an urgent message from the command center. "We've discovered something," a scientist called out. "The Zarkans have a weakness. Their ships rely on a central power source. If we can disrupt that, we might have a chance." Hope sparked in Sarah's heart, but she knew they needed time. "Jake," she called over the chaos, "we need to hit their power source. It's our only chance." Jake nodded. Power source. We need to be fast, Sarah said, her heart pounding. If we can make this work, we can turn the tide. They moved with urgency, their minds racing as they devised a plan. As Jake's team reached the ship, they set up explosives around the base. This is it, Jake shouted, preparing to detonate the charges. Just as they pressed the button, a loud rumble shook the ground. The Zarkan ship shuddered, and the power source began to flicker. It's working, Jake exclaimed, but the Zarkans turned their attention to them, in rage. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the ship, and an explosion shook the ground. Jake and his team were thrown back, landing hard on the pavement. Get up. We have to keep fighting, he urged, struggling to his feet. The battle was far from over, and the fight for their home had just begun. The bold proposal. After the fierce battle, the city was left in ruins. Smoke rose from the ashes of buildings, and the air was thick with the scent of destruction. Jake and his team regrouped, their faces covered in dirt and sweat. They were exhausted but alive. The Zarkans had been pushed back for now, but everyone knew the fight was far from over. In the command center, Sarah worked tirelessly with the scientists. They were trying to find a way to stop the Zarkans once and for all. We can't keep fighting like this, Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with concern. Every battle we lose brings us closer to defeat. We need a new plan. One of the scientists, Dr. Evans, raised his hand. What if we try to communicate with them? He suggested. Maybe there is a way to reason with the Zarkans. The room fell silent as everyone considered the idea. Could they really talk to the aliens who had brought so much pain? Jake, still catching his breath, shook his head. They don't want to talk. They want to conquer. We've seen that. What makes you think they'll listen to us? But Sarah had a different idea. What if we offered them something they didn't expect? She said, her eyes brightening. What do you mean? Asked Jake, confused. Sarah took a deep breath. What if we proposed to mate with them? Instead of fighting, we could create a new race, something that combines the best of both species. It sounds crazy, but it could work. The room was filled with shocked expressions. No one had considered this before. Mate with them, Jake repeated, his mind racing. That's a bold idea. But will they even accept such a proposal? Sarah nodded. We have to try. They expect us to fight, to resist. If we show them that we want peace, it might change everything. The idea seemed impossible, yet the desperation of their situation pushed them to consider it. Dr. Evans stepped forward. If we reach out to their leader and make this proposal, we need to ensure that it's clear we want peace. We can explain that humans and Zarkans can learn from each other. This could be a chance for both races to grow. Jake still felt uneasy about the plan, but deep down, he knew they had no other choice. All right, he said, let's give it a shot. We'll need to prepare a message that shows we are serious about this. The team began to work on the proposal. They gathered all the information they could about the Zarkan culture and their values. They studied their language and customs, hoping to find common ground. Sarah led the team, her determination shining through. After hours of hard work, they crafted a message. It was bold, clear, and sincere. They explained their desire for peace and the hope of creating a new hybrid race that could bridge the gap between their worlds. Meanwhile, the Zarkan leader, Zorak, watched from his ship. He was not pleased with the results of the recent battle. His forces had suffered losses, and he felt anger rising within him. When he received the humans' message, he read it with skepticism. Mate with them, he said, incredulous. These weak creatures think they can win us over with such foolishness. His second-in-command, a fierce warrior named Kor, stepped forward. Leader, we should consider this. If they are willing to offer such a thing, it could weaken their resistance. We can take what we want and gain control over their race. Zarek paused, considering the suggestion. Perhaps there is merit in this. If they want to mate, it could serve our purpose. But we must show them our strength first. Send a team to meet with their leaders and prepare for negotiations. Back in the command center, the humans were filled with hope. They had sent the proposal and now awaited the Zarkan's response. Sarah felt a mix of excitement and fear. "What if they reject us?" she asked quietly. Jake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We can't think like that. We've come this far. We have to believe they will see reason." The team waited anxiously for news, their hearts pounding with every minute that passed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a message came through. The Zarkans had agreed to meet. The room erupted in cheers, but Jake remained cautious. "This could be a trap. We must be careful," he warned. On the day of the meeting, Sarah, Jake, and a small group of leaders gathered at the designated location. They prepared themselves for the encounter, each feeling a mix of hope and dread. "Remember," Sarah said, "we are here to show them we mean peace." When the Zarkan delegation arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. Zarek stepped forward, flanked by Kor and other warriors. His eyes scanned the humans, his expression unreadable. "You dare to propose such a thing," he said, his voice deep and powerful. Jake stepped up to respond. "We believe that by working together, we can create a better future for both our races. Fighting will only bring destruction. We can learn from each other, and this could be the start of a new era." Zarek considered their words carefully. This was unlike any negotiation he had ever been a part of. As they spoke, he felt the weight of the moment. Would he take a step towards peace or continue down the path of destruction? The future of both species hung in the balance. Building bridges. The air was thick with tension as the Zarkan delegation stood before the humans. Zarek's eyes were narrowed, studying the humans with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. After a long pause, he spoke, his voice echoing in the stillness. "You suggest we join forces and create something new. But why should we trust you?" Jake felt his heart race. "We know this is strange, but we believe that working together can benefit us both. We can share knowledge, resources, and cultures. We don't want to fight anymore." Zarek considered this for a moment, then nodded. "If we are to build a bridge between our races, we must first understand each other. Show me what makes your kind strong." The humans exchanged hopeful glances. "We can share our knowledge of science and technology," Sarah suggested. "We have many inventions that can help both our races." Zarek raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Very well. Show me." The humans set up a series of demonstrations to showcase their technology. They began with a simple presentation about renewable energy sources, explaining how they harness the sun and wind to power their cities. "This can help reduce pollution and make our planet healthier," Sarah explained. Zarek listened closely, his expression unreadable. He could see the passion in Sarah's eyes and the hope in her voice. "Interesting," he said. "But can your kind share these resources with us?" "Of course," Jake replied, eager to show their willingness to cooperate. "We can help you develop similar technologies on your ships. Together, we can create a cleaner future." As the presentation continued, the humans introduced other innovations: advanced medicine, agriculture techniques, and communication technology. They shared stories of their achievements, the struggles they had overcome, and the importance of community in their lives. "Community is key for us," Sarah explained. "We believe that working together makes us stronger. We take care of each other, no matter what." Zarek's gaze softened slightly, and he turned to his warriors. "You hear this? They value community. Perhaps there is strength in unity." Kor, the Zarkan warrior, crossed his arms and looked skeptical. "But can they fight? Can they protect us in times of war?" Jake stepped forward, fueled by determination. "We may not be as strong as you in battle, but we have our own strengths. We are resourceful and resilient. We have fought hard to protect our home, and we will continue to do so alongside you." The Zarkans exchanged glances, contemplating the humans' words. Zarek nodded slowly. "You speak with conviction, But actions speak louder than words. If we are to build a bridge, we must take steps towards that future together. Over the next few days, the two races began to learn from each other. Zarkan engineers worked side by side with human scientists, sharing ideas and improving technology. They set up joint workshops where they tested new inventions and discussed their findings. The Zarkans were amazed by the humans' creativity and ingenuity. At the same time, the humans were learning about Zarkan culture. They discovered that Zarkans valued strength and honor, but they also had a rich history filled with art, music, and storytelling. "We have our own traditions," Kor explained, showing them Zarkan art depicting heroic battles and ancient tales. "These stories remind us of who we are." The humans were fascinated. They began to appreciate the Zarkan way of life, realizing that beneath their tough exterior, there was a deep sense of identity and pride. As they shared meals together, both sides grew more comfortable with one another. Jake and Sarah sat down with Zarek and Kor one evening, sharing stories and laughter. "You know, your food is quite spicy," Jake said, wiping sweat from his brow after taking a bite of Zarkan cuisine. Zarek chuckled, his fierce demeanor softening. "You should try our strongest dish. It will test your limits." The laughter and camaraderie helped break down barriers. The humans began to see the Zarkans not just as invaders, but as beings with hopes, fears, and dreams. And the Zarkans saw humans as more than mere obstacles to conquer. As the days turned into weeks, the two races made great strides in their partnership. They worked on joint projects that combined their technologies, developing new ways to harness energy and improve living conditions. Both sides saw the benefits of their cooperation, and a sense of unity began to blossom. However, not everyone was on board with this newfound partnership. Some Zarkans were unhappy with the changes, fearing that they would lose their identity. A group of radical Zarkans began to speak out against the alliance, calling for war instead of peace. "We cannot trust these weak beings," one of them shouted at a gathering. "They will betray us." This tension began to seep into the joint efforts. Jake and Sarah could feel the shift in the atmosphere. "We must address this before it escalates," Sarah urged during a meeting with the leaders. "We can't let fear dictate our future." Zarak agreed, recognizing the importance of unity. "We must hold a gathering to reaffirm our commitment to this alliance. We will show both our peoples that strength comes from working together." With that, they began to prepare for a grand assembly. They planned speeches, presentations, and cultural exchanges to demonstrate the benefits of their cooperation. It was a chance to solidify their partnership and silence those who still harbored doubts. As the day of the gathering approached, excitement filled the air. Both races were eager to showcase their progress and share their dreams for a united future. But deep down, they knew that true unity would require more than just words. It would demand trust, understanding, and the courage to confront their fears together. The hybrid plan. The grand assembly was buzzing with energy. The large hall was filled with Zarkans and humans, all eager to see what the future held for their newfound alliance. Banners of both races hung from the walls, symbolizing their unity. The atmosphere was a mix of hope and uncertainty as everyone took their seats, ready for a momentous occasion. Sarah stood at the front, her heart pounding with anticipation. She glanced at Jake, who was preparing to speak. "Remember, we need to show them our commitment," she whispered. He nodded, his expression serious. As the lights dimmed, Zarak stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent as he began to speak. "Today we gather not as enemies, but as allies," he declared, his voice powerful and steady. "We have learned from each other, and now we must take the next step in our journey together." Cheers erupted from the crowd. Zarek continued, "We have a plan, a bold plan to create a new future for our races. We call it the hybrid plan." Sarah felt a thrill of excitement. This was it. What does that mean? She thought. Zarek gestured for silence, and the crowd hushed once more. "This plan involves creating a new hybrid race, one that combines the best of both humans and Zarkans," he explained. Together, we can breed strength, intelligence, and creativity. This new race will be the bridge between our worlds. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some Zarkans looked intrigued, while others wore expressions of doubt. Sarah could feel the tension rising. She stepped forward, ready to support Zarek's vision. This hybrid race could hold the key to our survival, she said passionately. Imagine the possibilities. Together, we can create a stronger, more resilient species that embodies the strengths of both races. Jake joined her at the podium. We've already seen what we can achieve together, he added. By working side by side, we can protect our worlds from future threats. The hybrid plan is not just about survival. It's about thriving together. As they spoke, Kor stood off to the side, watching the crowd. He felt a mix of pride and concern. Some of his fellow Zarkans were still skeptical. We must ensure that this hybrid race reflects our values, he thought. Otherwise, we may lose what makes us who we are. The assembly continued, with presentations showcasing the potential benefits of the hybrid plan. Scientists from both races shared data and research, highlighting the advantages of combining their strengths. They discussed genetic advancements, how they could create healthier offspring with improved traits. One scientist explained, by mixing our genetics, we can create a species that is stronger and more adaptable to our environments. This new race could have enhanced abilities, such as better healing, increased stamina, and heightened intelligence. The crowd listened intently, and the excitement began to grow. But a voice rang out from the back. What about our identities? One Zarkan shouted. Will we lose ourselves in this process? Are we not risking our culture? Sarah stepped forward to address the concern. This hybrid race will not erase our identities. Instead, it will celebrate our differences. Each child born from this alliance will carry the legacy of both races. We will teach them our values, our stories, and our traditions. The Zarkan who spoke hesitated, considering her words. Can we truly preserve our heritage while embracing something new? Jake chimed in. Yes. The goal of the hybrid plan is not to replace but to enhance. We will blend our cultures, creating a rich tapestry of traditions and values. Together, we can find a balance that honors both sides. Slowly, the crowd began to murmur in agreement. The idea of a new race that honored both humans and Zarkans started to take root. They could see the potential for growth and strength. As the assembly continued, Zarek proposed a timeline for the plan. We will start with a small group of volunteers from both races. They will be the first to participate in this process, he declared. We will monitor the results and ensure that both races are represented in this new hybrid population. A wave of excitement washed over the room. Humans and Zarkans began to exchange glances, considering the possibilities. The fear that had once dominated their thoughts started to fade, replaced by hope. Kor raised his hand, seeking to clarify. What will happen if we do not succeed? What if this hybrid race does not bring the strength we seek? Zarek replied firmly, we will adapt. If our first attempt fails, we will learn from it and try again. This journey will require courage and perseverance. But together, we can achieve great things. The crowd erupted into cheers, their spirits lifted. People from both races began to feel a sense of belonging to something larger than themselves. The hybrid plan had sparked a vision of a new future, and they were ready to embrace it. As the assembly came to an end, Jake and Sarah stood side by side, watching the crowd. We've taken a huge step today, Jake said, a smile spreading across his face. Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with hope. This is just the beginning. We have so much work to do, but I believe we can make this happen. But in the shadows, the radical Zarkans who opposed the plan watched with growing anger. This is madness. One of them whispered to a group of followers. We cannot allow this to continue. We must act before it's too late. As the sun set on that hopeful day, the future of both races hung in the balance. The path ahead was filled with challenges, but together, they were ready to build a new world. One where unity, understanding, and love could thrive. Little did they know, however, that not everyone would support their vision of peace. The final choice. The days turned into weeks, and the excitement surrounding the hybrid plan continued to grow. Humans and Zarkans worked side by side, preparing for the first volunteers who would participate in the genetic blending process. Sarah and Jake felt a sense of purpose, their hearts filled with hope for a better future. However, beneath the surface, tension simmered. The group of radical Zarkans who opposed the alliance grew bolder, gathering more followers each day. They whispered in the shadows, spreading fear and doubt among their people. "The hybrid race will destroy us," they said. "Our strength will fade, and we will lose our identity." One evening, as Sarah and Jake were reviewing plans in the command center, a loud crash echoed from outside. They rushed to the window to see a crowd of angry Zarkans protesting against the hybrid plan. Signs were raised, demanding the end of the alliance. "This is getting out of hand," Jake said, worry etched on his face. "We need to address this before it escalates." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of their situation. "Let's organize a meeting. We have to listen to their concerns and show them the benefits of what we are trying to achieve." They quickly arranged a town hall meeting, inviting both humans and Zarkans. The next day, the large hall was packed with anxious faces. The air was thick with uncertainty as Jake and Sarah stood at the front, ready to speak. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah began, her voice steady. "We understand that there are concerns about the hybrid plan, and we are here to listen." A Zarkan named Rax stepped forward. "You ask us to join with these humans, but why should we trust them? They are weak and do not understand our ways." His voice was filled with anger, echoing in the hall. Jake stepped forward to address Rax. "We are not asking you to forget your identity. We want to create something new together, something that can protect both of our races. Strength does not come from fighting alone. It comes from working together." "But what if this fails?" Rax challenged. "What if we lose everything? Our culture, our pride?" Sarah raised her hands to calm the crowd. "We understand your fears, but think about what we can gain. Imagine a new generation that combines our strengths. Together, we can overcome future threats and ensure a brighter future for our children." The crowd murmured, but Rax was not convinced. "We need to see proof. We cannot rely on promises." Just then, Zarek entered the hall, his presence commanding attention. "I stand with these humans," he declared. "We have learned much from each other. I have seen the potential in our alliance, and I believe it is worth fighting for." His words sparked a wave of murmurs among the crowd, and a few began to nod. But Rax was not finished. "You can't speak for all Zarkans. What about the voices that cry out against this plan?" Zarek's gaze hardened. "Those voices are filled with fear, not wisdom. Fear can blind us to opportunity. We must have courage to move forward." Jake felt a surge of determination. "We want to show you that we can work together. If you truly believe in your culture, join us in this journey. We will ensure that your traditions are not lost. We can teach the hybrid children about both races." The crowd began to shift, the tension easing slightly. Sarah seized the moment. "Let us set up a demonstration. We can start with a small group of volunteers from both races, and then we will monitor the results together." Rax hesitated, his brow furrowing as he considered their proposal. "If we proceed, what will happen if the hybrids fail?" Zarek stepped forward again, his voice steady. "If they fail, we will learn. This is not just about creating hybrids. It is about understanding each other, about building a future based on trust. We are stronger together than we are apart." Slowly, the atmosphere began to change. The crowd started to murmur in agreement, voices rising with hope. "We can try," someone said from the back. "Let's see what happens." Sarah smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. "Let's move forward together. We will take this journey one step at a time." But in the back of the hall, the radical group watched with growing anger. "This is a betrayal," one of them hissed. We cannot allow this to happen. As the meeting ended, Jake and Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment. They had taken a step towards unity, but they knew the road ahead would be challenging. "We need to keep the lines of communication open," Jake said. "Let's make sure everyone feels heard." Sarah agreed. "We must show them that this plan can succeed. We need to organize workshops and cultural exchanges to strengthen our bond." In the following weeks, they worked tirelessly, organizing events that showcased both cultures. They held festivals where humans and Zarkans shared their music, art, and food. The hybrids were introduced as a symbol of unity, and the excitement began to spread. But just when they thought they had achieved a breakthrough, the radicals struck. One night, as the celebrations were in full swing, they attacked. They hurled stones and shouted curses, disrupting the joyous gathering. "You are fools to trust the humans," Rax cried, leading the charge against the hybrids. Chaos erupted as people ran for safety. Jake grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her toward the exits. "We need to get everyone to safety," he shouted. Zarek stood tall, trying to restore order. "This is not the way. We can find peace without violence." But his words were drowned out by the anger of the radicals. As the dust settled, the leaders met again in the command center, shaken but resolute. "We have to stand strong," Jake said. "We cannot let fear win." Rax stood before them, his eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can win us over with festivals and hybrid children? You are wrong." But Sarah, fueled by determination, replied, "You are only hurting yourselves. You must choose. Do you want to fight against a future of hope, or do you want to join us and build something beautiful?" The air was thick with tension as everyone awaited Rax's answer. This was the final choice that would determine the fate of both races. Would they embrace unity, or would they allow fear to tear them apart? The outcome hung in the balance, and the future was uncertain. A new world. The air was tense in the command center, heavy with the weight of the recent chaos. After the attack during the celebration, both humans and Zarkans were shaken, but a fire of determination burned in their hearts. Sarah, Jake, Zarak, and Kor gathered around a table, their expressions serious. "We need to take immediate action," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We can't let fear dictate our future. We have to show everyone the true power of our alliance." Jake nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "Let's organize a new event, a demonstration of our unity. We can invite both races to witness the strength that comes from working together." Zarak leaned forward, considering their plan. "A public display could help bridge the gap. If we can showcase the benefits of the hybrid plan, we may win over those who are still unsure." Kor, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "But we must also address the radicals. We need to show that violence will not be tolerated. If they see that we stand united against hate, it may help sway their minds." With a sense of urgency, the group began to outline their plan. They decided to hold a grand festival that would celebrate both cultures and the newly emerging hybrid race. They would feature performances, art displays, and cultural exchanges, highlighting the strengths of both humans and Zarkans. In the following days, preparations went into full swing. The community buzzed with excitement as humans and Zarkans worked together to create an unforgettable event. Banners were hung, stages were built, and food from both cultures was prepared. As the day of the festival approached, Sarah felt a mix of nerves and excitement. "This is our chance to show them what we can achieve together," she said to Jake as they set up a booth showcasing hybrid art. Jake smiled back, his confidence growing. "We'll show them that our differences can create something beautiful." Finally, the day of the festival arrived. The sun shone brightly in the sky as the hall filled with laughter and music. Humans and Zarkans mingled, sharing food and stories. For the first time, many saw each other as allies rather than enemies. The festival opened with a grand speech from Zarak, who stood on a raised platform. "Today we celebrate our unity. We are not just humans and Zarkans. We are a new generation. Together, we will create a world where we can thrive side by side." Cheers erupted from the crowd. The atmosphere was electric with hope. As the festivities continued, the stage showcased performances that blended both cultures. Zarkan musicians played powerful rhythms, while humans danced gracefully. The two styles complemented each other perfectly, showcasing the beauty of their unity. As the day unfolded, Sarah and Jake watched with pride. They saw people of both races laughing, sharing, and learning from one another. Children ran about, their faces painted with the colors of both cultures, symbolizing a new beginning. However, just as they were beginning to feel a sense of triumph, they spotted Rax and a group of radicals watching from the edge of the crowd. Their faces were twisted in anger, and Sarah's heart sank. "They're not giving up," she whispered to Jake. Jake frowned, knowing they had to confront the situation head-on. "Let's go talk to them. We can't let them ruin this day." They approached Rax, who stood with his arms crossed, glaring at the festivities. "What do you want?" He spat, his tone hostile. "We want to talk," Sarah said, her voice steady. "You don't have to feel this way. Look around. People are happy. We're creating something special." Rax shook his head, his expression filled with doubt. "This is all a facade. You think they will accept you. They are only here to appease you." "Look deeper," Jake urged. "These hybrids represent our future. They are a blend of our cultures, our strengths. If you give them a chance, you may see that they are not a threat but an opportunity." Rax stared at them, his expression conflicted. "I don't trust them. I don't trust you." "But what if you're wrong?" Sarah pressed, her eyes filled with sincerity. "What if this is the start of something amazing? We can build a new world together." For a moment, silence hung in the air as Rax wrestled with his emotions. The noise of the festival faded into the background. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "And what if it fails? What if we lose everything?" Jake stepped closer, his tone compassionate. "We won't know unless we try. Together, we can face whatever comes. We're stronger united than divided." Rax's gaze shifted to the festival, where laughter filled the air. He saw children playing together, a blend of humans and Zarkans, carefree and joyful. Something stirred within him, a flicker of hope. Maybe there is a chance," he said slowly, almost as if he were convincing himself. "But you must promise to protect our culture. We cannot lose who we are." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with hope. "We promise. We will honor both races. Together, we will create a future that respects our histories and embraces our differences." As Rax nodded, the tension in his shoulders eased. He stepped forward, joining Jake and Sarah in the heart of the festival. The crowd noticed him, some gasping in surprise, while others began to cheer. "Rax is here," someone shouted, and the atmosphere shifted again. People began to see that even those who were once divided could find common ground. Rax took a deep breath, stepping onto the stage beside Zorak. "I have come to speak," he announced, his voice loud and clear. "I once doubted our alliance, but I see now that we have a chance to build a better world together. We must embrace our differences and find strength in unity." The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing through the air. Jake and Sarah exchanged relieved smiles, their hearts filled with joy. As the festival continued, they knew they had taken a significant step towards a brighter future. Together, they had faced fear and doubt, and now they were ready to build a new world, one where humans and Zarkans could thrive as allies, united in their diversity. That day marked the beginning of a new chapter, where hope, understanding, and love would flourish, paving the way for generations to come. The future was bright, and they were ready to face it together.